taking everything you've been saying so far, I mean, there is so much we can take out of it. But there are two key skills that are included in your model that I think are very relevant to anyone today. And maybe just a bit of background will help you understand where I'm coming from. I personally, I can relate to you in a way. I mean, I consider myself someone who goes out there without any malicious intent. And what happened was that, during my university, I got involved in many organizations, and I quickly found myself in student politics, terrain I completely didn't understand. and I ended up in student politics particularly because I was involved in initiatives that received a bit of attention. So, I think it was good for the votes or whatever it was. But me not understanding how I ended up where I ended up, I found myself in the thick of these politics, and things were happening all around me, and I just didn't get it.
So been there, done that.
Yeah, man. And so my immediate reaction was, politics is not for me.
Yeah.
I'm walking away, But I continuously found myself in spaces with different organizations where my skills could add value, but the politics always came into it. And I realized ultimately when I became a management consultant, and we did change management, and I got to see politics as they are, I realized, all right, you can't run away from this. And then hearing you speak about it really opened my mind up. For me, still having this altruistic side of me, there's still a part of me that kicks back though when I hear you say certain things, like if you don't play, you'll get played, certain things like that. There's still that part of me that goes, really, but do I have to play in the first place? What is your view on that, on all I've said, the nature of politics, and what should people in the 21st century, with the change that's happening now, the diversity we're seeing in the workplace now, the generational interactions that we're seeing now, younger people coming into the workplace, etc., more women, different ethnic groups, what stance should we be taking to politics in the 21st century?
It's been a long journey for me. I started just where you started in terms of, I don't do that. The truth is, we all play politics. Politics are really just part of the normal ebb and flow of communication. I'll link it back to what I said earlier in terms of feeling good or bad. We don't like to be blamed. We don't like to be attacked. We don't like to be tall trees that take the wind. So the moment you have two people together, the moment you're in a family situation over Christmas or cultural gatherings or in your church or in your children's school or at work, why do people play politics? Simply because we don't want to be hurt. So we don't want to be hurt, so we defend ourselves by blaming, suppressing, externalizing, compensating. And politics is just a defense mechanism to say it wasn't me, it was him. So it's a natural thing. The reality is that if we want to change things for the better, there's only one skill with which we can do that, and it's politics. The example I'd like to give you would be if you were made the head of a huge organization tomorrow, the CEO, everything at your disposal, but underneath you are a bunch of old incompetents. Underneath that layer are a bunch of fantastic people. I'm not even talking about race or gender. You need to get rid of those old incompetents and get the new, young, intelligent people to do the work. How are you going to do that with the best intentions for your company? You are going to hold meetings excluding the old incompetents. You are going to bring in an early retirement policy. You are going to start retrenchments. You are going to do a whole lot of things that will facilitate those young and upcoming intelligentsia into the positions where they deserve to be, and hopefully as constructively as possible, helping the others on their way. That's politics. Now, for me, the biggest understanding of politics is because we always think that it lacks in integrity. I'd like to give you an example. Let's say you and I are contending for a CEO position, and we've grown up as the same homeboy, home girl. We've gone to the same college. We've got the same integral family values. We've studied the same. But I tend to call a spade a shovel. And you are very diplomatic. So let's say I'm you in the first incidence, or I'm myself in the first incidence, and I use what you've just said against me. Andani, you were quite a fool in those early days with the politics, huh? And you nearly dropped out. Okay, so that's calling a spade a shovel. Now, if I was being politically astute, I would say exactly the same thing with more diplomacy and respect by addressing your needs. And your needs are to be respected. Your needs are to hear and to be heard. And your needs are to be independent and to contribute. So I would say to you, those early days when politics confused you were hard for you and you almost wanted to run away. And gaining an insight into them and realizing that they make a difference for the better is exciting for you in planning your future. So which person would you relate to? The person who calls the spade the shovel? No. Or the person who's taken the time to address you diplomatically and respectfully and speak to you in your language?
Yeah, definitely. The diplomat.
The diplomat.
Yeah.
Now that is politics. Politics is where you look at people and say, you need to feel powerful. You value family time. You value learning. And just simply to adjust your insight and your language to speaking to them in a way that has meaning for them so that they can hear you. Instead of expecting people to speak your language.
Wow. So for those who are watching and listening to us speak right now and are thinking, you know what, I'd rather just stay out of this whole political. I get into the office, close my door, I do what I have to do. Or, you know what, I work on my own. I don't report to anyone. I don't have a boss. I run my own business. I'm a specialist. What would you say to them? What can they glean from this?
The bottom line is that you cannot not play. It is that the more you draw people into your paradigm, the more you will be illiterate and the more you will miss. So the rule comes down to have 2 ears and 1 mouth. The more you speak, the more disconnected you will be. The more you listen, the more you will learn. So whether you're an entrepreneur who's looking to sell their service to customers, whether you are a specialist in a company who's going to be sidelined because nobody can relate to you, or whether you are a manager of people, you will facilitate your future, your income, and your influence by understanding what makes people tick and by relating to them appropriately.
So it's in essence, it's about connecting. It's about relating.
Yes.
It's about communicating your values in terms of someone else's values so they can understand you. And I think, this term politics has got so many negative connotations, but when you frame it the way you just framed it, it's life. It's being human, isn't it?
Yes.
No, thank you so much for that. And I think, to bring this to a close, you're also known as a personal branding expert, and you've done a lot for your own personal brand, and you've helped many people. What do you say, how should we go about managing our brands? And I think I'd like us to tackle it in the form of 2 cases. Somebody who's developing a brand who has no brand at all. What should they do? That would be the first case. And the second case, someone who's got some damage control to do. So if you haven't like me, the naive me, you weren't playing anything and you happened to damage your personal brand. How do you go about repairing it? How do you go about dealing with it? So I'll leave it to you. You can deal with it anyway.
Super questions there. Let's define branding first. It's managing people's perceptions of you.
Okay.
So when do you want to come to mind? For which work do you want to come to mind? For which product or service or business do you want to come to mind? It's called the stickiness factor. So you need something called an elevator speech, in terms of where when you meet people, you tell them who you are and what you do and how it can benefit them. Because that's how we sell ourselves. We are of benefit to others. Let's have a look at a quadrant. Just imagine in your mind that one part of a quadrant says not heard and not seen. That's not a brand. Then another part of the quadrant says heard but not seen. That would be your pasta mama on the TV advert, where they pull her out the cupboard, she cooks the pasta, and they put her back in the cupboard. She doesn't get any credit. That would be your architect, your lawyer, your attorney, your financier. Please give us advice. Thank you so much. You may leave the room while the executives make the decision. You are heard but not seen. Then we have seen but not heard. That typically would be typecast by your events lady or your secretary with the low top and the short mini skirt. She is seen for her sexuality and the flick of her hair. But once you cast yourself in that sexual role, no one's going to take you seriously. So you don't want to be seen but not heard. So obviously the answer is you've got to be seen and heard. So you cannot create a career path or make an impact if you are sitting behind your computer knowing that you are the best person at the job and then getting resentful and confused when people who have many less skills than you but who go to every cocktail function and who know everybody who knows everybody get the job and you don't. Because you are not seen and you are not heard, that person is being seen and heard. So you need to vest your brand in your own personal authenticity. So I can't be you and you can't be me. So the way to determine your brand is actually very strongly linked to the journey of personal mastery. In my case, if I have to be very vulnerable, I would say to you, what is different about Renate? Yes, I've had a career. Yes, I've had accolades. But who am I really? I'm a very fragile person with very good intelligence, an overly gentle heart. I'm very introspective. I'm an introvert. I'm highly sensitive. I'm very intuitive. But in essence, I am not a toughie in my heart at all. My intellect can learn skills and implement them. So my intellect initially carried me, but what carries me now? It's the fact that I tell the truth. It's the fact that I am empathic. It is the fact that I am kind. It is the fact that I care. And that's who I am. So it's a little bit like, as you get older, you don't have to sell yourself out. You really just have to be who you are. So in a nutshell, if you want a brand, what do you have to do? My brand is I say things other people only dare to think. And over the years, I have learned to tailor that into something diplomatic. When I was young, I was a rebel and I thought, this is rubbish. People are talking CRAP. And I used to speak the truth, but it was not welcome because it was affrontative, it was rude, it was untimeous, and it was not politically astute. But over the years, I've taken that energy and I've learned to write with that energy. So when I get angry, I write and I make a difference. When I get angry or upset, I develop a lecture and I speak about it, but in a positive, diplomatic manner, because I want to make a difference. I don't go out there and I'm not negative and aggressive, I hope. I rather just speak the truth and look for solutions. So in essence, who are you really? And you can ask yourself, what poems touch you? What movies touch you? What life events touch you? Have you got a hot button that's about justice? Well, maybe then that's your journey. Do you love books and literature? Maybe that's your journey. Do you love being on stage and being the center of attention? Well, then so be it. Have a voice. Now, if you've damaged your brand, as some of us have done over the years, or you want to change your brand. For example, I was known as the EAP lady, Employee Assistance Program, therapy and clinical. It took me 10 years to extinguish that brand. And it really is about knowing how people perceive you and knowing what message you want to create into the future and giving that message consistently on your email as your bottom line, on your business card, every time you speak. So tell people who you are, what you can deliver, what difference you can make and how they can benefit. So if you've damaged your brand, sometimes you need to leave. But then at least go into your new position, having gone to a coach, having gone to someone who's an expert, or having read about branding and identified your new brand, and then basically be it, behave it, believe it, write it, speak it. And the biggest mistake people make is that if you ask them, what is your brand? They'll say, I'm beautiful, if they're women. It makes my hair stand up. They'll say, I'm kind. They'll say, I'm a fixer. They'll say, I love working with people. They'll say, I'm a one-stop service. So what are you telling people? You're telling people, use me and abuse me. To be crude, I say that's the donkey brand, otherwise known as ARSE. So the secret to branding is determine where you want to go. Do you want to be seen to set trends? Well, then that's what you need to say. Do you want to be seen to be strategic? Well, then that's what you need to tell people. Just make sure you can deliver on it. Do you want to be an innovator? Well, that's what you tell people you are. So your brand needs to speak to what you're wanting to create or your next level of development. Subjects like I'm loyal, I'm honest, I'm hardworking are going to make people take advantage of you. Identify your competence, and your language needs to suit the context. I can't go in there and tell people I'm highly intuitive, which is what I am, but it's not appropriate for high-level business. But that I'm a trendsetter, I read people, and I'm an incisive thinker, and I'm an innovator. That's what I tell them. But it comes from the same source of energy.
Goes back to the way you communicate.
Yeah, and what you feel and who you are. And you just adapt your language to suit the context so people can hear you.
I leave this wonderful home of yours, moved, shifted, like when I first saw you speak for the first time. And I just want to thank you again for all the insights you shared. You know, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We will share with our viewers links to your work for those who want to go in a bit deeper. I definitely want to go in a bit deeper. I think for me, if I can sum up what our discussion has been about, is about the notion that there's more to life than good intentions. And in fact, good intentions alone can actually become a very negative thing. That in order for good intentions to be realized, context needs to be taken into account. Self must be developed. Self must be where there are wounds healed, where there's opportunities. Self must be realized. And for me, I want to thank you for that kind of thinking, and especially coming from someone at your generation who is at the forefront of this thinking. For me and for the Transcendent Development viewers, I think we value it so much. So thank you for taking the time out. Thank you for this chat. And thank you for welcoming us into your wonderful home.
Andani, it's been a privilege. And I just want to end with saying love is an action, it is a verb. So judge people and yourself not by what you say, but what you do and the difference you make.